You're getting worse, at least that's what it feels like. The crying came back, the exhaustion won't lift. You thought you were past this, but here you are again, heavy, numb, wondering if you've been lying to yourself this whole time. But here's the thing your mind won't tell you. Peace doesn't register as safety when you first meet it. It registers as threat, because your brain was shaped by years of bracing, scanning, reacting. It built an entire operating system around danger, real or imagined. So when the danger finally fades, when things go quiet, your system doesn't celebrate, it suspects. That's why calm feels like dread, why rest feels like laziness, why not being on edge feels like you forgot something critical, you think you're falling apart. But what if your nervous system is just learning to stand down for the first time in years? What if the numbness isn't emptiness, it's your body turning off alarms it doesn't need anymore? What if everything you're interpreting as failure is actually your system finally trusting that it's safe to stop fighting? Healing doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels like freefall, and you won't know you've landed until you look back. There's a version of recovery nobody prepares you for. The one where you're doing everything right, therapy, boundaries, rest, and somehow you feel more lost than when you started. You're not relapsing, you're not broken, you're just experiencing something most people mistake for failure, the actual process of healing. Because here's what they don't tell you in the self-help books. Getting better doesn't feel like climbing toward the light. It feels like standing in a dark room while your eyes adjust. Uncomfortable, disorienting. You keep reaching for the switch, but the switch is gone because you don't need it anymore. Your body spent years running on adrenaline and vigilance. It became so good at survival that it forgot what living felt like. And now it's learning, slowly, clumsily, and it's going to feel strange before it feels right. So if you've been wondering whether you're healing or just getting better at pretending, stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you are the signs most people miss. The ones that look like setbacks, but are actually proof you're further along than you think. And if even one of these resonates, you're not going backwards. You're right on time. Let me tell you about Lisa. Not her real name, but her story is real enough. She spent 2 years in therapy, did the work, learned to set boundaries, recognize her triggers, challenge her thoughts. And one day, she woke up to nothing. No panic, no racing heart, just a Tuesday morning, quiet, still. And it terrified her. She called her therapist, convinced something was wrong. "I don't feel anything," she said. "I think I'm getting worse." Her therapist smiled. "No, you're just not used to feeling safe." That's the paradox. Progress doesn't feel like progress. When your brain has spent years wired for danger, your amygdala, that almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for threat detection, has been working overtime for so long that it doesn't know how to clock out. It learned that tension equals preparation, that worry equals protection. So when things finally calm down, when there's no crisis to manage, no disaster to prevent, your brain interprets the quiet as the problem. It searches for what's wrong because for years, something always was. Healing feels uncomfortable because your nervous system is being asked to unlearn the only language it's known, survival. And unlearning doesn't happen overnight. It happens in these strange, unsettling moments where calm feels more dangerous than chaos ever did. You're not broken. Your brain is just catching up to a reality it didn't think was possible. You stop exploding at people. That's good, right? That's progress. Except now you're not really laughing either. Your friend tells you something exciting and you smile. You nod, you say, "That's amazing." But inside it's just quiet, flat. Like someone turned the volume down on your entire emotional range and forgot to turn it back up. You used to feel everything at once. Now you feel like you're watching your life through plexiglass. And that's when the panic sets in. Did I go too far? Did I numb myself into nothing? No, you didn't. What you're experiencing isn't emotional death. It's your nervous system finally getting permission to stop screaming, For years, you've been a fire alarm going off in your own body. Real threat, imagined threat, burnt toast, didn't matter. Everything registered as emergency. Joy felt manic. Sadness felt catastrophic. Even calm had this undercurrent of dread, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Your brain learned to live loud, because loud meant alert, and alert meant safe. Now that alarm's powering down. And the silence? It's not emptiness. It's the gap between the old wiring and the new. Your system is learning that emotions don't have to hit like freight trains to be valid, that you can feel something without it consuming you. Researchers have a term for this: emotional regulation recalibration. Your brain is resetting the intensity dial. And yeah, in that in-between space, things are going to feel muted, distant, like you're waiting for something to land. But here's what's actually happening. You're no longer performing your feelings to prove you're alive. The emotions will return, but when they do, they'll show up as signals, not as storms. Someone asks why you can't make it to dinner. Old you would have built a case, laid out the reasons like evidence in court, justified, apologized, over-explained until they said, "No worries, I get it," because you needed them to get it. You needed proof that your boundaries were reasonable. New you just says, "I can't make it." And then silence. Not the hostile kind, just space. You let the answer sit there without dressing it up, without softening the edges, without turning your no into a negotiation. And it feels wrong at first, like you forgot something, like you're being rude or cold or selfish. Because for years, your worth was tied to how much you could explain yourself into being understood. But that need, that reflex to justify your existence at every turn, it was never about communication. It was about safety. When you grow up or survive, in environments where your needs were questioned, dismissed, or punished, you learn to make yourself small and convincing. You learn that no isn't enough, that boundaries need footnotes, that rest requires a doctor's note. You learn to audition for your own life, and now you're unlearning it, not because you've become arrogant or detached, but because you've started to internalize something most people spend their whole lives chasing: the quiet belief that you don't owe anyone access to your reasoning. Psychologists call this self-validation. You stop outsourcing your sense of okayness to other people's approval. You stop checking if your feelings have permission to exist. It's not about being right. It's about no longer needing to be right out loud. Nobody's going to throw you a party for drinking water. There's no applause for going to bed at a reasonable hour. No medal for saying no thanks to plans that would have drained you. No one's tracking the mornings you didn't doom scroll for an hour before getting up. And that's exactly why these moments matter. Because healing isn't one big heroic decision. It's not the day you finally quit the toxic job or leave the bad relationship. Those are milestones, sure, but they're not where the real work happens. The real work happens in the 11 p.m. choice to close your laptop instead of spiraling into another research rabbit hole. It's the decision to eat something, anything, even when your appetite's gone. It's putting your phone in another room, stretching for 60 seconds, texting back without performing. Tiny, forgettable, yours. This is where identity shifts. Not in the lightning bolt revelations, but in the 1% adjustments you repeat when no one's watching. Your brain doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about patterns. And every time you choose the small thing that serves you, even when it feels pointless, even when it doesn't fix everything, you're laying down a new neural pathway. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman-Barrett talks about how our brains predict who we are based on what we consistently do. You're not the person you say you want to be, you're the person your repeated actions are teaching your brain you already are. So when you drink that water, you're not just hydrating, you're becoming someone who takes care of themselves. When you set the boundary, you're not just saying no, you're becoming someone whose peace isn't negotiable. Small choices, accumulated quietly, built in secret, until one day you look up and realize you're not the same person anymore. You check your phone, 3 unread messages, All of them fine, none of them urgent, and you don't respond. Not out of spite, not because you're mad, you just don't feel the pull. That old reflex to reply instantly, to keep the conversation alive, to prove you care by being available. It's gone, or at least, it's quieter. And weirdly, it makes you feel guilty, because the people pleaser in you is still there, whispering that good people respond immediately, that caring means being accessible, that love is measured in how fast you show up. But here's what's actually shifting. You're learning that your peace isn't a bargaining chip. For years, relationships might have felt like maintenance. You managed them, kept them warm, checked in not because you wanted to, but because you were scared of what silence would mean. Scared they'd leave, scared they'd think you didn't care. You became a responder before you were a person. And now there's less urgency. You're not rushing to reassure people you still exist. You're not over-explaining gaps in communication. You're not twisting yourself into whatever shape keeps the connection frictionless. This isn't detachment, it's discernment. You're not pushing people away. You're just no longer pulling yourself apart to keep them close. Attachment theory talks about earned security, the process of moving from anxious or avoidant patterns into something more stable. It's not about becoming cold, it's about becoming whole enough that your relationships stop feeling like life support. When you stop negotiating your peace, the right people don't feel abandoned. They feel relieved because finally they're connecting with you, not the performance of you. The TV's off, your phone's across the room, the playlist ended 20 minutes ago, and you're just sitting there, no podcast filling the silence, no scroll to numb the stillness, just you, the hum of the fridge, and whatever's happening in your head. A year ago, this would have been unbearable. Silence used to feel like a diagnosis, like if you stopped moving, stopped consuming, stopped filling every gap with noise, you'd have to face what was actually there. The thoughts you've been outrunning, the feelings you didn't have names for, the weight you kept pushing down with distraction, so you filled the void with anything. Music, shows, work, people, drama. It didn't matter as long as it was loud enough to drown out the sound of yourself. But noise was never the solution. It was the symptom. Psychologists talk about experiential avoidance, the lengths we go to avoid uncomfortable internal experiences. We're not lazy or weak, we're just trying to survive what we think we can't handle. And for a long time, maybe we couldn't. But now the quiet doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like space, room to breathe, room to think without urgency, room to exist without needing a reason. You're not meditating, you're not practicing mindfulness, you're just here. And it's not terrifying anymore. That shift from running from yourself to being able to sit with yourself is one of the most underrated signs of healing, because it means your internal world is no longer a place you need to escape. The silence isn't empty, it's finally yours. You used to replay the same conversations in your head for months. What they said, what you should have said, what it all meant. You'd write unsent letters, rehearse confrontations in the shower, search their name online at 2 a.m. just to see if anything had changed. You needed it to make sense. You needed the story to have an ending that felt complete. A bow, an apology, an explanation that would finally let you close the book and move on. But here's what nobody tells you about closure. Sometimes it never comes, and the healing isn't in getting it. It's in no longer needing it. One day you realize you haven't thought about that person in weeks, not because you forgave them, not because you let it go in some grand spiritual release. You just stopped waiting for the conclusion. The narrative in your head lost its grip. The unanswered questions stopped feeling like open wounds. You realized that some chapters end mid-sentence, and that's not a failure of your healing. That's just how some stories work. This is psychological maturity. The ability to hold ambiguity without it consuming you, to live with unfinished business and still feel whole. You're not bitter, you're not in denial. You've just learned that closure is something you give yourself, not something you extract from people who are never going to offer it. So you stop checking, stop rehearsing, stop needing the last word. Because you finally understand the story doesn't need a perfect ending. It just needs to stop taking up space in your present. Your jaw isn't clenched anymore. You don't notice it right away. It's not a moment, it's a morning. You're brushing your teeth and you catch yourself in the mirror and something's different, softer. Your shoulders aren't up by your ears. Your breath isn't shallow. You're standing there like a person who isn't bracing for impact. Healing shows up in your body before it shows up in your thoughts. Your nervous system doesn't wait for you to figure it out mentally. It just starts to believe, quietly without permission, that maybe the danger has passed. For years, your body was a clenched fist, tight chest, locked knees, that constant hum of readiness, like you were always 1 second away from having to defend yourself or run. Even when you were sitting still, you weren't really resting. You were just paused. But now you're taking up space differently. You're not making yourself smaller when you walk into a room. You're not holding your breath during conversations. Your hands aren't fidgeting, searching for something to do with the excess energy your body no longer needs. This is what they mean by somatic healing. Your nervous system is recalibrating at a level words can't touch. The vagus nerve, the one responsible for calming you down, is finally getting a chance to do its job. And it doesn't send you a memo, it just does it. You might not feel happier yet, but your body feels safer. And that's not nothing, that's the foundation, because thoughts can lie, emotions can spiral, but your body knows when the war is over. Here's the truth, you won't feel it happening. You won't wake up one morning with a notification that says, "Congratulations, you're healed." There's no finish line, no certificate, no moment where everything clicks into place and you finally feel like the person you've been trying to become. Healing whispers. It shows up in the small, unremarkable shifts you barely notice until you look back. The calm that used to terrify you, the numbness that turned out to be rest, the silence you stopped filling, the explanations you stopped giving, the peace you stopped negotiating. You're not the same person you were 6 months ago, a year ago, and maybe you can't see it yet, but your nervous system does. Your body knows. The people around you feel it, even if they can't name it. If even one thing in this video described where you are right now, you're not falling apart, you're not going backwards, you're further along than you think. And the fact that you're here, questioning whether you're healing, that's the most honest sign of all. Because the people who aren't getting better, they're not asking. So keep going. Not because it feels good, but because somewhere deep down, your body is finally learning what it feels like to be safe. If this resonated, leave a comment. Let me know which sign hit hardest. And if you want more like this, subscribe, because we're just getting started.